Hi, this is John Henry from Goochland County Public Schools, and I want to give you a quick overview of Google Apps for Education, specifically Google Drive as it's now being called, and the Teacher Dashboard product from Hapara. In Goochland this year, the school year of 2013-14, we're using the integration of these two tools to deliver productivity tools to both teachers and students in grades 3 through 12. The goals for the workshop that we're having, and this workshop is being offered as an after-school 2-hour session. I basically wanted to give a summary of that entire workshop in just a few minutes in this video, so that if you attended the workshop, you could kind of refresh your memory with some of the stuff that we covered. And if you had not taken the workshop, maybe by watching this video, you'd want to come and get some more hands-on experience with it. But these are the goals for the workshop. And I specifically pulled these out because I saw them as areas of growth for a lot of our teachers. Not everybody uses, for instance, the drawing tools. Not everybody integrates, uses spreadsheets in the classroom. And of course, the new product for us is Teacher Dashboard. So this is kind of the outline, the way we're going to go with looking at everything. So the first one is spreadsheets. And I feel that spreadsheets get underused. Obviously, the first thought that comes to mind maybe is we use them for doing calculations, but they're also great for maintaining lists, for collecting and recording data, for sorting information, data, and of course its ability to graph data is pretty significant too, to visualize for us. And if you've never used Google spreadsheets, if you're familiar only with Excel, the Google version has some features that Excel does not. So it's worth taking kind of a little tour, if you will. The other thing I want to remind folks about, if you look at the Virginia Standards of Learning for Technology, this is grades 3 through 5, and they specifically call out here that students at this age level need to know how to use a spreadsheet. That's in the SOL. And if we come over here to 6th and 8th grade, productivity tool, spreadsheets, graphing, it's written in there as well. If we go up to the high school level of technology standards, it also talks about being able to manipulate and present data. And obviously a spreadsheet is the ideal tool for that. So spreadsheets are lurking in the background as a tool that students need as a skill throughout their career in schools. And if you've never thought about using them, I just gave you some ideas, right, how you can use them. I want to break out of this presentation just for a moment and show you Google Spreadsheets. So I'm going to open up this sample spreadsheet. And this is very simple, right? So I'm doing this at a very basic level. I don't mean to insult you. If you know what you're doing with spreadsheets, scrub the, maybe it goes this way, scrub the video across, and you don't have to watch this part. But what I've done is I've set up a nice little data collection here of temperatures. Now they're not labeled that way, right? So the first thing we might talk with kids about is how to kind of manipulate, once you get this in here, how you manipulate the numbers to make it look good, and then how do you present it in terms of a graph. Maybe that's the assignment, right? That would be a good elementary use of a spreadsheet. Well, first of all, you can see that something weird's happening here, right? When I hover over here, it says that my name comes up, and yet I'm in this space here. Well, that tells me, and I see one other viewer, I'm looking at this spreadsheet. One of the cool things you can do is you can actually edit this in front of your kids' eyes. They can be on their iPad or on a laptop and actually see what you're doing live without having to look at a big screen, which is pretty cool, right? So you can see up here in my tabs, I actually have 2 open, and I'm going to actually cancel that one, and I'll come back here. As you saw, I was already into the graphing there. So one thing I might talk to kids about is, you know, you can kind of optimize your space, because as these get big, you may want them to look differently. I may want to do better labeling, right? And you see how it has two lines there. Easy way to fix that is to double click right here on this edge. And what it does is it makes it just wide enough to accommodate everything. I can do that over here too. Double click and it collapses it just a little bit. The other thing I might want to do, and I'm using the shift key here to highlight two columns, is make this center lined, right? I want to make this as easy as possible to really see the data. So I have a couple things I can do here. One thing, this is left aligned over here, and I may decide that I want to make this right aligned so that everything's lined up here against here so I can see each day of the week. The other thing is, what is the most important thing here? Well, it's the data, the temperatures that we have collected. And so I'm going to make this bold just so they stand out a little bit. And the other thing that you could do is decide that everything in the column, as many labels as you're going to use, is going to have a lighter color to the font. And likewise, I can come over here and maybe I'll set temperature at like a red or a pink color. So instantly I've just made this a little more legible. And this is great when you're showing and sharing your data because you want people to concentrate on what's important, but you also want to look for errors. And this just makes it a little easier to see everything. Likewise, if we couldn't see this very well, I could highlight here, and I could come up here and just change the font size. Maybe I'll make it 18, right? And then I can come back here and do my double clicking again, and do that, right? So I've set this up in a really great way to do a graph, and that's important for kids to know. Data comes in a lot of different ways. They may not know exactly what it should look like, but you're giving them this example to show them this is what a good data collection looks like to make a graph. And so the next step is to highlight the data we want to graph, just like we would in Excel or numbers. And then we come over here, and of course the proper term is chart. We typically say graph in school, but chart is the right term for using a spreadsheet. And you can see there's lots of different styles. And you could start to talk about which style was good, which style was bad. This is kind of cool in that it gives you some ranges here, right? And we could see what this looks like. We could certainly play with it here and say insert. It says click, I want to edit. I don't really want to edit it. I just want to, I want to be able to move this. There we go. Got to get that hand. So I'll put this off to the side, and I'm going to try to interpret it because I'm not sure. This is a graph I haven't seen before, right? So it says Tuesday, the low is 28. Okay, that is correct, and the high was 54. So it seems to have put the lows down here and the highs over here. So on Saturday, the low was 50. That's why it's over here. And the high was 61. And that my highest was 68. So that's why that's high. But this really doesn't give us an accurate picture of temperatures. I mean, it's an interesting way to show what we wanted there, but I really need to go back and change this. So I'm going to go back to the editing here, go back to start. And I really don't see what I want. I wanted two line graphs because I think they're easy to see. So I'm going to click on more, and you can see all the different types of charts that you can use in Google Spreadsheets. And I mentioned that I would like a line graph, and I kind of like this smooth style, so I'm going to choose that, and I instantly get to see what it looks like. And for me, this is great because I can see the low temperatures and I can see the high temperatures, and even as I drag across, it actually gives me the real data, which is awesome. So now I've got, I'm going to grab from the top to move it around. Now I've got my chart, and I can add a title. This week's temperatures. And if I want, I can customize things in here. Change the colors if I want, so on and so forth. So all you have to do is click around in the chart and you can do your editing. So this is the basics of a spreadsheet. Most basic thing you probably want to do is have it collect some information and then display it. But there's a couple of things that I'm not sure most people know. Number one, in a spreadsheet you can have multiple sheets because we're thinking in Excel parlance we have workbooks. So I can hit the plus button here. I can get a second one, right? And I just want to show you some things with something called autofill, right? Autofill is something that if you had the word name, let's say, or you had a number, and you want those to repeat, you grab from this corner and you pull down and you get a repetition of that. Same thing here, okay? But it also is a little smarter than that. Let's say I want a row of odd numbers, so I'm going to put 0, 2, 4. And this could be a test for kids, right? Say, do you know all your odd and even numbers? Or do you know your prime numbers? Things like that. And then I can come in here and I can, let's say I'm going to copy that, Command C, paste, so there I get it there. So I actually, in this column, I'm going to be practicing my even numbers, and here I'm going to have the computer tell me the answers. It's smart enough to recognize some patterns, which is pretty cool. If I did Monday, Tuesday, shift click to get that, pull down, I'll get more days of the week in order. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I want months of the year. The important thing here is to highlight both. That shows the pattern. Pull down, and I can keep pulling down until I get my 12 months of the year. Right? So this is some just time-saving features in a spreadsheet, and this works across all spreadsheets, by the way. Functions that you're used to, you can do sorting, filtering, and functions. So these are the most often used functions probably in a spreadsheet, right? But you can get a full host of functions, and this web page tells you about every function in here. So if you know, for instance, about mode, and you're used to mode in Excel, you can come in here and see how mode works, right? So if I want to come here and calculate the mode of this average, okay, the average of all that was 13. And if you understand mode, you understand there is no mode because there's no number that repeats. If I were to go in here and let's say put an 8, put another 8, and put another 2, and then we do mode, the mode is going to be 8 because that was the most frequently occurring number. Should have known that before choosing mode as the formula there, as the function. But anyhow, this is a typical spreadsheet program. You can add columns, you can add rows. Unlike Excel, you don't go forever. You get down to 100 and you can continue to add. You can go over to the side and you continue to add additional columns over here. Whenever you're in doubt, click on something and right click on it. You can do all kinds of things when you right click on something in Google Apps, including the spreadsheets. But really what makes this the most powerful is the ability for me to add people. Right? So when I go up to share and I can add users to this, we can be in the document at the same time, editing at the same time. So that's just a very quick overview of spreadsheets, and I'm going to exit at that point because we're going to talk actually a little more in the workshop about using spreadsheets across different subject areas. But I just want to give you an idea and show you that spreadsheets don't bite, and they can be a useful tool for a number of activities you may want to do in the classroom with kids. Now the one that's used most often is probably Google Docs, right? This is pretty much the standard word processor, and the thing I want to point out about this is the power of comments. So a student, let's say, is going to do a pretty standard writing assignment in Google Docs. They've shared it with you, and you're like, well, how am I going to edit this? I can go in and I can actually do the edits myself, but that's more like a collaborative thing. That's what kids might work on together. But as the instructor, you may want to use comments. And this is a helpful shortcut to remember. It's Command Option M, or you can go up to the top of the screen and use that little comment button. You highlight some text, you hit the comment button. You can also hide all comments with this comments button up at the top, or show comments. And you can also receive notifications when changes are made. You can basically subscribe and get emails when documents have been edited or comments are replied to. And when you share documents with kids, you have 3 different levels of sharing. You can just let folks view the document. In other words, they can't edit it or they can't comment. They can have full access rights, which means they can edit the document. But you can also give just commenting rights to somebody, which means that they can only use the comment tools. They can't change the original text. And so these are 3 different methods that you could use to collaborate with students. And if you hadn't used comments, I know everybody has it in a Google Doc. I think they're an invaluable tool for things like editing student work. You can also use them in class where students solicit comments from one another, and they don't allow their peers to edit their documents, only to insert comments. So that's how comments work. They pretty much work like they do in Word. They appear in the sidebar on the right, and you can reply to comments. You can have like a threaded discussion. You can also, once a comment's been made and you make changes, you can click and say, I've resolved this comment, and I've kind of put the comment to rest by making changes that were probably recommended to me by somebody. So the next thing is forms and graphing. We already looked at the spreadsheet and how easy it was to graph, but keying in data in a spreadsheet is not very fun. What's more fun probably is collecting your own data, and we can use Google Forms to do that. Forms are a very powerful part of the Google Apps suite, and we can collect all types of data with this. When I say all types, I'm not talking about live temperature or images, but we can collect both text and we can collect numbers, which is really all text, right? But if you're collecting data as text and you have to translate that, that is not fun, trust me. So if you want to be able to graph your data, you need to make sure that the data is in a clean format. Otherwise, you're going to be doing some editing in a spreadsheet. And when you're ready to collect your data, there's a bunch of ways we can broadcast the form. If you have an email address, you can send it to an email address. You can grab the link of the form and broadcast that somehow. You can turn that into a QR code and put it out there. Lots of different ways to do that. The first thing you're going to encounter when you create a form is this sheet, which asks you what style you would like, and I usually choose the default one. And these templates actually change over time, so which is kind of interesting. They're always kind of adding some new ones and taking some away, which is interesting. And then when you get into here, this is what it looks like, and I think they've really made this, despite the fact there's lots of stuff on the screen, they've made this a little simpler than it used to be. So the first thing to notice at the top is that we have a menu bar, and responses says 0, which means nobody has responded to this survey. As you put out a form or a survey and you get responses, that number will change, so you'll know how many you have. The form settings are kind of important. And the first thing I'll say, I guess, before we get to the form settings, is that little box up at the top that says, where do you want to store the data? You now in Google don't have to create a spreadsheet with your data. You can do some very basic analysis right within the form. But most folks are going to want to dump all their data into a spreadsheet, and so this button up here will allow you to do that. It'll lead you through creating a spreadsheet where you can analyze your data. The next thing, however, there's that box at the top that says Form Settings. Your surveys, you may want them to be anonymous. You may also wish to collect data from people outside of Goochland. And so by unchecking that first box, anybody in the world could actually fill in your data as long as they had the URL of your form. And some folks like to actually collect the names because that just helps. You don't have to ask somebody what is their name because it will collect their username. So these are choices to make. But if you want an anonymous survey, make sure that you have not checked collect respondent's username. The next thing down here is we're actually editing the form, and there's lots of things to fill out here, including the title and description. But one of the things folks don't realize is once they create their questions and they don't like the order anymore because they've maybe haven't gone in order, you can reorder your questions by grabbing on that little handle above each question, and you can just drag up and down and reorder your form. Another thing that's important, sometimes I ask questions with very similar answers. Let's say I'm asking Likert type questions with a numbered response, right? So you're going to give me a 1 to 5 rating. Well, I don't want to have to choose that question type every time. All I want to do is create a new question, and the answer is always going to be the same, 1 through 5. So what makes this easy is using the duplicate button. So if you have a bunch of questions that are similar, you write your first one, you hit duplicate, and then you only have to edit the next one. You don't have to create it from scratch. You can decide whether the question is required. For a lot of the forms I do, I want everybody to answer all my questions, so I check that on every question. And when it's time to add a second question and you're not duplicating, you can click the Add Item, and you'll be able to see all the different styles of questions you can ask, some which are more advanced than others. And last, at the bottom is a confirmation page. When somebody completes your survey or your form, you may want to give them a message, and that's your ability to customize the message where it says your response has been recorded. And you can also sometimes want to publish the results, so you can show people it'll do a very simple graph and show people what the results are. And you can also let people go back and edit their responses after they've submitted if you check that box. So those are some different options when designing your form. And when you get data, obviously we've seen this already, but you'll be able to, with your form data, create graphs as well. And it's pretty easy to do. You jump into your spreadsheet, highlight the data you want to graph, hit the chart button, and you can start playing with graphs. In some cases you may want to clean up data. In some cases, if you're asking a lot of questions, some which are text-based, you're not going to want to graph the entire data set. You're going to want to choose a subset. And so it's important maybe to resort some columns or something so that all your numerical data is in one area. It makes it easier to graph that way. The next one is drawing. Now Google's added, or played with, let me say, a drawing app for Google Apps. And this has only been getting better. The quality of the drawings are better, and now you can integrate images into this drawing area, which makes it great. I would actually spend some time just playing in this one, and there's a very small set of tools available to you. You can see them displayed on the upper left there. You can add lines and arrows and curves, polylines or polygons, arcs, and scribbles. Okay, and those are pretty self-explanatory, I think. Use different drawing types. Then when you get into shapes, you get 4 categories of shapes, and I've put 3 of them out there so you can see. And basically once you choose a shape, you just click and drag, and you can size the shape any size you want. It's basically creating a pseudo vector image. You can resize it many times and you don't lose any quality. Hidden in the insert command is also word art. If you like word art, you can mimic some of the crazy effects that Microsoft Word has been allowed you to do with creating bold text and with color. You can insert images either off a web page or one that you upload. And so if you want to do, for instance, a little conversation and have call-outs, you could do that and have little speech bubbles. Now why do this rather than some of the other great tools that we have here in Goochland? This is collaborative. You can work on a drawing at the same time with somebody else, and it's in the Google Apps ecosystem, right? You don't have to go out and upload something. You're right in Google Apps. And so I think this is one of the most underutilized tools, because this is a great tool for kids to be able to do graphic organizers in class. And as we'll talk about in a few moments with doing templates, you can create a drawing template that gives kids the basis of what you want that graphic organizer to look like, then share it with them. So to show you that, I'm going to exit out of here and go back to Google Chrome. You'll notice they've added new buttons here in Google. To get back to your drive, you just click the colored button up. Now I'm back in my drive. And I'm going to create a new drawing. So I'm going to go here to create and say drawing. And I'm thinking that I want my kids to do a Venn diagram in class with something we're studying. So that would mean I probably go to the shapes area, and for Venn diagrams, obviously I want some ovals. And so I'm coming here and I'm holding down the shift key, right? So I'm not getting an ellipse, I'm getting a circle. And I'm going to draw one like that, and you see it's already filled in with some color. That's great. I can customize the color over here as long as it's selected. I'm going to choose a darker blue. And I want to duplicate this. So I go here, or Command D. Here's my second one. I want to make this a different color. And I'll make this red. And basically it puts a little alignment there so I can see that they're kind of aligned. And for a Venn diagram, you know, I would really like to be able to see through, and there really isn't transparent. See? I mean, there's transparent, but there's nothing there. There's no opacity setting. So I'm going to have to make these transparent, but to differentiate in the color, instead of choosing a fill color, I'm going to go with a line color. So I'll make this one blue. I'll make this one, whoops, make this one red. Now you can see the color, right? To make it even more bold, I can come over here and change the thickness. Maybe I'll make it 8. Okay, well, it's getting better. I can drag across and highlight both objects. What this will enable me to do is to move it up here, hold down the shift key again because I don't want ovals, and I can make this bigger. Now I can actually move it down to the bottom. Insert a text box. I'll put the word title here. And I'm just doing this right now to kind of prepare students for what I'm expecting. I want them to have a title at the top of their Venn diagram. They'll be putting labels in here using text boxes, and they'll be able to write their words here. So I've basically created this template. And I'm going to call it Venn template. Okay. And now that's just sitting in my drive. If I go to my drive, there you see I have that Venn template. Haven't shared it yet, but I have now prepared a template file that I'll have my students add content to. So remember, with drawings, they're collaborative. You can add comments just as you could with docs, and it accommodates now images. So let's get to this concept of a template. I think you probably understand templates in terms of using Pages or Word or Keynote or something like that, where you've got this file kind of with some settings on it that look a certain way, that are ready to go. All you do is insert your content. In terms of Google, it's any file, and think about delivering that file to your students. Students are going to add content or modify the template, and in so doing they're going to have their own unique copy of it. This is different than just sharing a single document with, let's say, a class of 15 students. If I do that, all 16 of us can jump into the document at once, but there's only a single document. In this case, I want students to work independently, and so I'm deploying them a template, and they will each work on the template independently, which means they're going to have their own unique copy of that template. It can then be shared back to me, and I can assess it. You can think of these as digital worksheets, right? So you're going to the photocopier, you're making a set of worksheets, and at the end of the day, every student has their own. That's the same concept here. Of course, I'm not encouraging you just to do digital worksheets, but that concept, I think, really makes sense to teachers in terms of how templates work. There are a couple ways to do templates in Google, and the Google way, I've put these instructions actually from their help section, so if you ever want access to this nice set of instructions, you can go to the help menu in Google Apps and type templates, and this comes up. So templates, you can explore templates that other people have created through Google, and we also can share templates within our GLD little world. So you can create a Goochland only template, and if, let's say, you were doing a lab report manual or a lab report sheet for a science class, so you want students to use a lab notebook. Basically, you have a template made up for what that should look like. You've shared it to GLD. You teach students how to go to the templates page in Google Apps, which is basically /templates and the URL, and they can search within all the Goochland templates for what you want them to see. They can open it up, and now they've made their own unique copy. That's a little long-winded and probably complicated for younger students. So while this works great for teachers, sharing like lesson plan templates, there's actually a smarter way to do this with students. And the way we do that is with a new tool that we've been trying out this year called TeacherDashboard. TeacherDashboard is actually not made by Google, it's made by another company called Hapara. But I think it's an essential tool for using Google Apps in the classroom. And so the last part of this presentation is really going to cover TeacherDashboard, and in so doing, I'm going to cover what smart copies do. A smart copy is a way to create templates or deploy templates to students in your class. So this comes from a really helpful wiki I found on kind of some tutorials on Teacher Dashboard, and it gives you some ideas here about the different methods. We can do share and read only, we can do share and comment, we can do share and read write. And the copy piece is really the most powerful, and that is the idea of a template. Okay, so when we do click on the little button to do a smart copy, make sure that it stays up as copy up at the top. So let's get to Teacher Dashboard. To access Teacher Dashboard, you're going to go to a new URL, and I've linked this on our Educator Resources page. And once you land there, you're going to have to sign with your Google account. And once you do that, you'll see a screen similar to the one that I have here below. The only difference is you won't see everything that I see. I can see all the classes in Goochland. You'll just be seeing your classes. Now, if for some reason you need access to other classes, you can always click on the All Classes tab and search for other classes. There's really no protection for teachers not being able to see into classes. We've left that kind of open. So I can actually easily find your classes by going and using the search bar at the bottom where it says Filter View and dial down into a class. Now, I'm not going to be showing any of the classes live here because I don't want to show student data in this video that will go live, but this basically is your entrance to Google. And what the folks at Teacher Dashboard have told me is when you're using Google Apps with students, this is your primary interface for dealing with all of your student content. And if you trust me with it and you force yourself to use this tool instead of going to Google Apps, you're going to be a happy camper because this makes managing all of your student content pretty easy. So what does Teacher Dashboard do? There's a few at-a-glance features. You'll be able to view your students organized by your classes. You can view and turn in assignments into a folder with your course name on it. You'll be able to view a list of all the Google Drive contents of your students. So this is not stuff they've just shared with you, but anything in their folder. So you're not going to have to chase after somebody if turn something in. If they haven't turned it in, you can actually go find their version of it sitting in their Google Drive. You can access the shared email address for your class, which means if you don't want to use Dashboard and you just want to share something with your entire class, or you want to email your entire class, this email address will send emails or will share with your entire class using one address. It's kind of like a GHS at GLND that shares with everybody at the high school. You can use Smart Copy to do templates, and it enables you to do password resets for students, which is a great time saver. In addition to this, at the high school this year, we're using Teacher Dashboard to manage Blogger. In other words, you can do blogging with students this year, and Teacher Dashboard is a tool for that. We'll also be exploring later giving teachers access to student email so that as they learn how to become good digital citizens with their email, you can actually peek into their email account and make sure that they are being good digital citizens. So Teacher Dashboard, pretty simple tool. We're going to walk through it live in the class. I'm sorry I can't do that here in the video. But I just want to kind of finish up with a review of what I wanted you to get out of this. First of all, to reveal a rationale for using these new tools. If you haven't used them, you need to talk to some teachers who have. I'm confident they will tell you that this is a huge time saver and it opens up new opportunities for deeper learning. I want you to consider some new uses for the tools. Docs has been pretty significant, but what about spreadsheets? What about drawings? What about forms? I want you to be able to see those and experience those. I want you to understand the sharing and collaboration options. Okay, the view, comment, full edit. And the other piece you should know about is ownership. When you create a document, you're the owner of it, which means you control access to sharing options. So for instance, if you shared a document with editing privileges to a student and they invite somebody else in and you want to kick that other student, that other person out, you have the option to do that because you're the owner. I want you to get kind of a gist of what Teacher Dashboard could do for you. And the most important thing, you can log in, sign in, just start playing around with it. I think you'll figure out pretty simple soon because it's a very simple interface. And hopefully if you come to our session, I'll answer all your questions about using Google Drive in the classroom. This has been a great pleasure to talk with you today and acquaint you with Google Apps and Teacher Dashboard. My name is John Hendren. Don't fear emailing me if you have any questions. Thank you for watching.